Hey, this is an interview for the CJAM Oral History Project, where we are celebrating 40 years on the FM dial. I am in the large production studio today with Batool.
Hi.
It is Tuesday, August 8th, 2023, and it is 4:22 p.m. Hi, Batool.
Hi. 2 minutes off from my favorite time. LOL. I'm just kidding. Thanks for having me on, Liv.
Thank you for joining me. I guess we're going to start off from the beginning.
That's usually a good place to start.
Where are you from, Batool?
So I was originally born in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. I lived there till I was like maybe a year old, and then we immigrated to Dearborn. And
Michigan?
yeah.
Okay.
Lived there for a few years, and then we came here to our home of Windsor, Ontario, Canada. And I've lived here since 2004. Although, by the way I drive, you would not be able to tell that I've ever even stepped foot into the city. I get lost all the time.
That's awesome. So I guess you went to school in the area and pretty much like grew up in Windsor.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I grew up in the West End of Windsor, and I went to like Marlborough when I was younger, and then I like wanted to avoid West End politics, so I went to Vincent Massey Secondary School.
What is West End politics?
It's like we were all the kids who grew up in like low income houses and like had families who didn't have time to like cater to every single one of our needs. So we would find ourselves in like dangerous situations a lot more than like South Side kids.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So I figured if I went to school with like kids from the South Side, I would like take myself out of the equation of being among the troubled youth of Windsor.
Oh,
It didn't work. It didn't work. I was like an addict for like a few years still, so old habits die hard.
and how did you discover CJAM?
So I have been going to FOG for like 2 years now, maybe 3 years. And I like have seen licks around with the programming director of CJAM with like her cool outfits, and had conversations with her where like we talked about music, and I was like, this is just very cool. And as a musician, a lot of my friends get some radio play. My songs cannot be streamed here because they are too explicit, but seeing them repost CJAM and whenever they would be on the top 12, I would be like, slay. So I remember CJAM did a call for queer personalities, let's say, to host some shows on here so that they can get like the queer perspective. So I remember AWE at night, I saw Licks. I was like, hey, can I have a show on CJAM? And she was like, yeah, because you are a queer artist and that's a valuable perspective. So yeah, the rest is history, I guess.
That is so cool. So you started out with Kitty Klub, am I correct?
Kitty, Klub, that was me. Yeah, I started Kitty Klub because I wanted a way to showcase voices that were like often overlooked, like queer creatives, especially like POCs. As like an Arab queer, I feel like we don't get enough representation in media. So to hear the story behind like something that I know a lot of other queer kids like go through, I thought that would be really cool to showcase my story and then have my friends on to showcase theirs too.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Is Kitty Klub still running?
Yes, but Kitty Klub got a rebrand.
Ooh.
Ooh, ooh. I was like, why do I have cats representing me when I literally have the word bat in my name? Like, if there was ever going to be an animal to represent me, it should be a bat and not a kitty. So Kitty Klub is now called Chats with Bats. And instead of highlighting queer creative coming out stories, try saying that 5 times fast. We are now highlighting like how queer creatives like live their lives. So I had some friends on to talk about different things like fashion, like their relationship with how they came into their personal style as they discovered their sexuality and evolved through it. I also have some friends come on and talk about their relationship with drag and how that's helped with like their gender identity and how that has like made their personality come to light a little more. Also like artistic influences, just getting the queer creative perspective on the day-to-day lives of queer people.
That is so cool. Have those episodes aired yet?
They have not, unfortunately. I am so poorly managing my time recently. Yeah, it turns out there's so much more that goes into being a visual artist than just making the art. You also have to be like social media suave and like
Yeah.
So I have not finished editing them yet, but they will be premiering in these next few weeks. Knocking on wood.
That is so exciting.
Yeah.
And I guess you've been working on these. How long is Chats with Bats going to go on? Is it like a limited series or
So it started out as I wanted to just do a mini series, but I think I have like 8 episodes at this point.
Ooh.
I feel like that's not so many.
That's 2 months. If you play one every week,
That's what
that's
I'm saying.
2 months.
That's like a sixth of the year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm excited for those to air. I'm excited for people to hear like what my friends have to say about how being queer has impacted their relationship with like art, and how art has impacted their relationship with being queer, and how the two go hand in hand. They're so smart.
Have you ever considered doing your show live?
Well, I have, but then I thought about it and I was like, what would I sound like live on the air? Like I know I would fumble over my words. Like I spend hours editing each one of the podcasts because there will be like awkward silences or times where I just go or like my voice cracks. I think that would be humiliating for me to experience on air.
That's fair.
But you do your show live, right?
I do my show live.
How, like, what is that like?
Oh my goodness. So when I started doing it live, I did a month of pre-recorded episodes, and then I realized I hate doing it pre-recorded.
What was your gripe with pre-recorded episodes?
My hard drive, first of all, doesn't work with our equipment here. So whenever I tried to upload files, I couldn't get any music onto Adobe Audition.
Yeah.
So I would have to play the music and like sit and hear while it played.
Okay, that's definitely a barrier.
And then I guess I found it boring pre-recording my episodes. I have a theater background.
So you live for the live performance?
Not anymore, but on the radio, yes. But when I first started out, so in January, I started doing my show live, and I would write scripts, and I would follow it word by word.
Did you leave any space for improv? Did you ever like go off script?
I did that eventually. After like a few weeks, I'm like, this sucks. I can't write a script for every single one of my episodes.
Yeah, that sounds tedious.
I do dot jots now.
Smart.
So, if I was like talking about Batool, I'd be like, Batool, they are an artist. They are doing this. They are doing that.
Yeah.
Check out Batool. Here are their socials. So I kind of go off of that format.
That's similar to how I like talk to my guests on the show, because I usually give them like a list of questions before we actually sit down and record. And I'm like, come up with just ideas to answer these, and then we'll talk about it more like IRL. But I think it's a good idea to just like have down things that you want to talk about. Like you were saying, this is Batool, and she does this, and she does this. But instead of that, it would be like, who are your artistic influences? Why are you influenced by them? Do you believe in role models?
That's it.
Yeah, they're really good.
So I guess like what inspired, this is why we edit interviews.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, also tell me if I'm like not doing everything that I need to be doing.
You're good.
Okay,
this is so good.
Okay, cool.
As an artist, why do you believe that like campus community radio is so important here?
Well, like I said, I've been going to FOG for a few years, and the only platform for the people who dedicate so much time to performing every Monday at the open mics or like making music on their own free time, the only platform for their music to be heard right now is CJAM. Like, this is bringing the communities that would not be together otherwise together. You're bringing like the seedy like bar goers with like the university educated people and it's like blending two worlds that like have a hard time being blended otherwise, yeah. So I think it's really important for like fostering community, like creating culture, and just like uplifting voices too, because I had no representation for little Arab queers. Like if there is a person out here listening and they're Arab and they're also queer, they can go back into the CJAM archives and like listen to me come out to my parents live on the radio. That sounds like it has an impact on like future things, you know?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. And without that, like the queer community wouldn't exist without each other. So the fact that CJAM is uplifting voices of the queer community feels crucial.
I have what might be a bit of a hot topic, but do you think CJAM has enough queer programming right now?
You know, how many like queer run shows do we have right now? I know there is the Hawaii Good Vibes segment. I have a little Chats with Bats moment.
We have This Way Out, which is like not made by us at CJAM, but people bring it in.
Yeah.
And then my show, but it's not like a queer show. It's just run by me, who is queer.
Which like makes it queer.
It
right?
does make it queer.
Queer
And I
enough.
do have like queer episodes, but it's not all about being queer.
I think when it comes to like you got to ease people into queerness a lot of the time. Like you don't want to overrun the media with all the gay content you can find.
Yeah.
Because we still do live in like a very heteronormative society. I hate that word, but I think it's still important to like understand who your audience is. So I think the fact that we even have any shows is something that we should be grateful for.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What do you think? What's your take?
I don't know. I that's something I'm still like thinking about. Because it's like, oh, do we need like a queer news show? Do we need a feminist news show? Oh, we have like a couple feminist news shows, but like, do we need more? Is there more we should be doing as a community?
Who else's perspectives are like needed?
Yeah, exactly. So I know a big thing about campus community radio is that we try to, of course, include as many perspectives as we can.
Because everybody under the sun goes to school. Like, it's not just made for like one specific type of person. So you want to have like people that other people can like relate and like latch onto.
And Batool, you're a visual artist as well as
am.
one of our favorite radio hosts here at CJAM. But you're a visual artist.
Yeah.
And you designed a really cool sticker for us.
Stampy Jammy! I love him.
For the 2023 April Pledge Drive.
Yeah, getting him to look like that was like such a fun journey because at one point I made this sticker just for everybody listening for context. It was a stamp with a little Jam character and he has a shirt that says I heart music and with a little music note and he's like snapping his fingers to the beat and yeah, he just like looks so cute. And I love the idea of having it as like a stamp because I was like, that way it feels like he could be a world traveler, like he could go anywhere. And that's what music does. It like brings people all over the world together. And that's what CJAM is doing.
This is my first time hearing like
The thought behind it.
That is sick.
Thank you. Oh yeah, if you give me a prompt, I will take it to like Neverland. Like I will take it so far from where you started from just because I like my brain to go down those rabbit holes.
Yeah, I think your prompt was like the jamming ones, right? Which is one of our slogans.
I was like, okay, what can I do with this?
Jamming ones.
Yeah. On the sticker, it also says the jamming one.
Yeah. We like to put that on everything these days.
It's a good slogan.
It is a good slogan.
And all of the other art that came out of that, the pledge drive too, was so good. I remember like the t-shirts were sick. I love the jelly like pouring out. It was just so good.
It's awesome. But you also aside from doing fun commissioned work like making the jammy stamp, you paint and you do a whole. You were just the Art Site's Waiwiongatan artist in residence.
I was.
Talk about that.
It's been now almost 2 weeks since the end of my residency at Art Site, and I still have not fully processed the events of what happened because as a little artist who has never gone to school, never even taken like a high school art class, the idea of landing a residency, I could literally cry like thinking about it because that is so not something that I ever thought I would achieve in this lifetime. So to have achieved it like so early into my career as an artist and then just been given the space to do whatever I wanted, it was amazing. it was amazing. I got to experiment in like so many different styles. I got to expand my Lehman's collection, which was a piece that I did about trauma after like going to therapy and like talking about my traumatic childhood. And it just gave me a lot of time to reflect and think about art on like a cosmic scale as opposed to just what it does for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Really exciting.
Thank you.
And I know this might be a bit soon to ask, but like, do you have anything planned next?
Oh my god, I'm so glad that you asked because I'm actually I applied for the Arts Cultural Heritage Fund grant. Yeah, back during their first round in January, and I have since been hosting workshops all around different shelter programs and homelessness day programs. And I am now curating a gallery filled with artwork done by people experiencing homelessness. Because on top of being an artist in the city, I also work in social services. And as an artist, you just like bring art wherever you go because like it's just like in you, right? So working in social services, I find that the clientele who is among the homeless community is very talented, and they're just like people who have fell on harsh luck a lot of the time. So that's what brought upon the idea of like the Colors of Resilience artwork by Those Experiencing Homelessness gallery, which premieres August 13th, 2023.
That is so exciting.
Thank you. I know, I'm so like, you just have no idea how much talent there is.
And I love that you volunteer here because I feel like your values as a person really reflects the values of the station. Because here, like, it's our goal to represent underrepresented voices a lot of the time. And it's really cool to talk to you and see how you're doing that with like things in the community and in your own life, like outside of the station.
Oh yeah, I'm like an advocate through and through. I think growing up, I was always like a fighter for like my moral beliefs. I was like radicalized at a really young age because I downloaded Tumblr. When you have Tumblr at like 13, you become a feminist, a super Hulak fan. Like, it does not stop. It does not stop.
Not super Hulak.
No, of course. Please tell me you were part of the fandom.
I wasn't.
I was just part of the Super Who fandom. I didn't watch Sherlock enough.
I didn't watch any of them.
I am shocked.
There's a religious background that goes into that, though. I wasn't allowed to consume certain media.
Oh, that's very valid.
That's a conversation for another time.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, we won't get into it. But speaking of religion, like, I was radicalized at a young age, so anytime my traditional family's like religious beliefs would come in the way of beliefs that I would pick up off the internet, I would like fight tooth and nail to try to get my voice heard by them. So now I feel like in my everyday life, I'm like, how can I fight for everybody to have the same rights as like I feel like I do? And I'm not saying that like queer POC women have all the rights, right? Or like the safety or the comfort that necessarily should be given to them, or us rather. But I'm like grateful for having a voice, and I think it's important to use your voice correctly and uplift other voices like CJAM is doing. Yeah,
for sure.
Did any of that make sense?
It did make sense.
Okay,
it made so much sense.
Okay, cool.
Since this is an oral history thing, something I guess that could be considered historical has recently happened, and we were talking about it earlier before we started this interview. But right now, Meta is restricting news outlets from promoting on their platform, so Instagram and Facebook. And there's a lot of like, I'm still very confused with like what the bill is and like the goals it's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, Canadian legislation is taking away social media's right to promote
But it's
news.
also like social media taking away news outlets like rights to promote news. It's like a very like complex situation right now.
Does this not feel like literally like 1984 to you?
I have actually never read 1984.
So George Orwell wrote this book about this society that was governed by a communist like belief system, but you know how like communism rarely ever works in practice?
Yeah.
So in this book, he has this like organization called the Thought Police that controls the type of media that you consume. And this is exactly like what it feels like.
Oh, I see.
Like even with Elon Musk buying Twitter and changing the logo after like 10 plus years of Twitter having a bird into an X icon, and then also changing the amount of tweets that you're allowed to consume per day, that feels so dystopian, doesn't it?
It does. Like, I don't know. I was recently worried because like CJAM, like we use platforms like Instagram to reach out to like university age students, or just people in general, but like Gen Z specifically uses social media
Oh my God, yeah.
to interact. Like Instagram specifically, like that's how we find out what events are happening in the city and around
Literally.
campus. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on like CJAM, like our Instagram being inaccessible for so many people in Windsor?
So earlier when I was on Instagram and I saw Lix's story and it said that she couldn't access CJAM from the account, I was like, oh, maybe something weird is happening with the account. But then when you and I were talking about it and we pulled up the page and I couldn't even see anything that you guys had even ever posted, that's insane. So we pulled up CJAM's account and it was a blank thing that said, what did it say?
It said something about Canadian news, like you cannot access Canadian news in Canada.
Yeah. Which is, where am I supposed to get it then? The National Post?
Like, I don't know. Our Instagram is like how we like connect with people.
Yeah.
Like
Instagram is like the way that I've made most of my friends like in Windsor. It's the way that people stay connected.
not everyone in Gen Z's has the radio on all the time.
No.
So like
It's impossible
for a
to.
lot of people, like I know I find, oh, my friend's doing this like really cool episode of their show. I'm gonna make sure I tune into CJAM at this time. But how are we gonna find out about that now?
Yeah. So what, like, I want to ask you what the plan is, but you guys literally just
We
found
don't
about it
have a
today. That's insane. I mean, maybe be like a little flattered that Instagram thinks that y'all are news,
Well,
right?
we are news. Technically, all campus community radio stations, 15% of our media has to be news, but that can also fall into spoken word, like what we're doing right now.
Oh.
But what we're not talking about, I guess what we're talking about can technically be like news, but like talking about like life stories, like, you know, growing up queer in Windsor,
Yeah.
that's not like groundbreaking news.
People have
Like,
been doing that.
it's not like we're sharing like the latest breaking news or this news in Windsor. Like we're telling stories and we're like sharing stories with the community.
So this is why I'm like, this feels so dystopian, because it feels like, what are they trying to hide? Like, I know that sounds so conspiracy theorist, but I was having a conversation with one of my guests on my podcast, actually. They go by Meeks Minolta, also like Meeks. They're a visual artist as well. And they mentioned something about how when a city neglects its people, eventually, like, nature will overtake it, and our, like, the industries that we put all of the eggs in the baskets of, they crumble. And having our right to consume news casually through a social media app feels a little bit like the city is failing us, and feels a little bit like the people are not being given the rights that we once had. Like, that literally
Yeah.
feels like taking away a human right.
In a way it does. And it's such a complicated issue. And like, we don't have all the answers, obviously.
No.
But I guess for the sake of oral history, for someone who's like looking back on these episodes, like, I don't know, 10 years from now, this is what's happening. And it's like kind of crazy.
Yeah. This is the breaking news.
This is the breaking news of the CJAM Oral History
Yeah.
section of 2020 onwards.
I hope whoever is listening to this, you have the right to read news on Instagram again. Like, think about that. Think
Yeah.
about going onto Instagram, seeing, like, what's CJAM up to this weekend, and not being able to access that.
It's like resources to connect with your community.
So that's the thing. Like, humans innately need community to survive. And we've been conditioned to live these very independent solo lives, like living alone or like catering to your alone time, but not emphasizing time spent with friends, you know? The only types of community that you can find are often school related, or like if you are a person who has like addiction issues like me, also like drugs, like that brings community together, but it's like you're either part of a community that you have to pay into, or you're part of a community that you have to pay into, but then you get something immediately rewarding out of it. There's no, right now in Windsor, it's hard to find and come across just community that exists for the sake of community, which is why I'm so thankful to be a part of like the creative community here, because it feels like we're all just gathered for the purpose of the greater good of creation.
And speaking of the artist community and like the greater good of creation,
something
really cool happened a couple weeks ago.
Oh, the Higher Grounds Festival?
The Higher Grounds Festival.
I know.
It was the first time that CJAM has had a festival.
Sorry.
It's all good. It was the first time that CJAM has had a festival since like 1980 something. I'm supposed to know this. I'm the historian here. But news is so hard to find.
You're right though. It is in 1980 something. So like
it was like it wasn't like the first, like the early days we tried to do a festival, but like 40 years later, here we are again, and
it was so successful. Like every single show had at least like a crowd of people, which spoke volumes for the culture in Windsor. If you're telling me a local radio station booked all of these musicians, it was like 10 plus musicians per day. It was a 3-day festival, and each one of the venues, so it was like across 4 different venues: Art Site, Meteor, Fog, and Craft Heads, where I performed. And each one of the performances and the sets were catered so nicely together. Like they had me open for Epoxy the Drag Queen and friends. Do you know, Liv, I need to tell you, like, literally, you don't understand. Drag gave me hope. Drag gave me like a reason to live at the age of 17. The fact that now I'm 23 and I got to open for a drag show as part of a festival run by CJAM, like that made all my little girl dreams come true. Like it was awesome. It was so cool.
It was a really amazing time for sure. And you performed your songs Slutty and Slutty 2. Don't worry, I will be bleeping these words out if this portion ends up on the air.
It's SLUT and 2 SLUTTY. Do you have to bleep those out?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, that's the loophole.
But since we can't play these songs because of the CRTC compliances and swearing, which is understandable.
Yeah, I do like swear repeatedly in both of them.
I've just can you explain, like, I don't know, for those who've never heard of Slut and Too Slutty.
You want me to talk about it?
Talk about it. What is Slutty?
Okay, so I wrote Slut. Actually, do you want to hear something that I don't often share?
Sure.
Okay, a little tidbit just for you historians out there. Slut was actually inspired by this guy who like briefly stalked me. I remember is this okay to talk about? Yeah,
if you're comfortable with it.
Oh, I'm totally comfortable, but I'm like, do you want to hear this?
How graphic is it?
No, it's not graphic at all.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I just remember, so my lyrics are fight me, kill me, fuck me, kiss me, which is like, can't say the F word, but and I remember he would just like show up at places that he knew I was going to be at, because again, I post on Instagram all the time, like for the events that I'm going to. And eventually I had to learn to like just block him off of Instagram so he didn't know where I was. But every time I would see him, I would be like, fight me, right? Because I was like, that's like kind of fun. That's like kind of, it's like vaguely threatening. And often when I tell men to fight me, they're like, oh, I would love that. I'm like, no, I'll actually kill you, bro. So that was why I wrote the lyrics, fight me, kill me, fuck me, kiss me, because it's like, no matter what I do, you're going to call me a slut. So I'm going to own the word slut, like it's mine to have. And you take that how you will. Like
reclaiming it.
Yeah. Especially growing up in like a traditional household, I couldn't even like walk out the house wearing like shorts a lot of the times as like a 17-year-old. That was tragic. I'll like wear a t-shirt and that's like too slutty for people to see, you know? So it's the idea that like I never got the chance to be innocent ever in my body. So whatever, I'm a slut. Okay.
Own it.
What's so bad about that? Yeah. Own it. And I want everybody to be as slutty as humanly possible. Yeah.
And like whatever that means to them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it doesn't even mean like sexually. It just means like holding your own and like having a backbone and standing up to people when you feel like disrespected. Like that's slutty to your own needs. That's what we need, so that's why I wrote Too Slutty, which is the sequel to Slut. Because lo and behold, old habits die hard. I had an ex who also briefly stalked me for a second. Yeah, he would just like show up to my house unannounced and then like cause a ruckus. So the lyrics to that song are, I miss you, you broke my fucking heart, and I miss you, you're tearing me apart. Because even through all the heartbreak that I experienced, like I still missed him, and I still miss the times he would call me cum slut, which like you have to bleep, I'm sorry, but
It's all good.
But those are also part of the lyrics. And then at the end of the song, I just scream, leave me alone. And it's so cathartic because those are the words that like I wish I could have said to him IRL. So writing a song about it helps with the healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's it like sharing a song like that with an audience, and
God.
like a very receptive audience as well?
I know. Whenever I perform, it's actually the best experience ever because you'll have like 60-year-old men in the crowd, and I go, "Hey guys, when I say fight me, kill me, I want you to say F me, kiss me, okay?" And then I'll look, and there will be 60-year-old men screaming back, "F me, kiss me." And I'm like, this is incredible. It's so cathartic, and often when I perform Too Slutty, I do like a little speech during a musical part, and I say, this one goes out to all the guys who don't take no for an answer, and if you've ever wanted to tell one of them to leave you alone, say it with me. And then I get the whole audience to scream, leave me alone, during the last parts of the song. And that, I regularly have people come up to me afterwards and be like, that felt so good, or that must feel so good. And I'm like, you have no idea. That's why I encourage you to scream it with me. It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
I love that. I once had a really interesting conversation with a cis white man about your song.
Oh my God, that's exciting. What was his perspective?
And he was like, I don't really understand it. And I said to him, and I was like,
I remember.
well, I don't think it's for you to understand. Like, it would be great if you understood it, but you're not.
Yeah, he's not the target audience.
You're not. It's harder for you to be in that position than, especially like being like a feminine appearing person on the streets. You know, you hear these things yelled at you sometimes.
Oh my God, yeah.
And as a cis man, that's something you're probably never going to have to experience.
Or even if they do experience it, they're like flattered. Like, you know what I mean? It's not the same kind of like threat. It doesn't pose the same kind of threat that it does to somebody who is more femme presenting. Like walking down the streets on your own as a person who looks vulnerable, that alone is way scarier than just like existing as a cis straight white man in a dangerous situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I told him, it's not for you to understand.
You're so right. It's literally not like good. I'm glad that he doesn't
like
understand
it wasn't written for you.
Yeah. When I wrote it, I was like, this is about them. You know?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. Now I have to like give the disclaimer. If you're listening to this and you're a cis straight white man, I don't hate you. I
don't hate you.
Yeah. Liv and I are just saying that your experiences are not the same as ours. And maybe when you're listening to Slut and Too Slutty, think about what it's like to live as a smaller femme presenting person on the streets. And then think about your mentality when you see a smaller presenting person, you know? And then listen to it again and keep streaming it till it hits 1 million streams.
Yeah, get some money in Batool's pockets.
All 0.01 cents that Spotify gives me. It's actually that much.
Really?
Yeah. Like, yeah.
Damn.
It's not the side hustle people think it is.
No, I can imagine.
No. That's why you gotta have a heart and a passion for it.
Of course. So you've obviously spent a lot of time here at CJAM. I've been seeing you come in the studio so much recently.
I know.
I was wondering if you had like any silly stories or special memories of your time like at the station that you'd want to share?
Well, I think like the silliest story that I came prepared with is like the fact that I used Kitty Klub to come out to my parents. That is like when I tell you that was one of the best decisions I ever made in my entire life. I recorded an episode, my first episode of Kitty Klub. I address my parents by name and I go, I'm gay. And then I think maybe a month after it aired, I like let it simmer for a sec. And I was like, what do I do here? And my relationship wasn't the best with them anyway. So I send it to our WhatsApp group chat. And I'm like, you guys should listen to this. Sorry. And I'm like, you guys should listen to this. And then they do. 20 minutes later, I'm like bombarded with phone calls and texts and messages that say like, I wish you wouldn't have come out like this. Like, think about the impact you're going to have on other kids who are questioning their sexuality. You're going to be the reason some of them come out as gay. I'm like, good. That's the goal. Like, yeah. And then followed a few months of silly little fights that I had with my family, but like CJAM giving me the platform to share that with my family. I think that's pretty silly goofy. Would you agree?
I think it's pretty amazing and like definitely a very bold way to come out and something that I would expect from you in the best way possible.
I know. I'm like, Batoolio is just an entity that exists and she doesn't come from like a family. She like just exists on her own. And she has like a chosen family through the gay community. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of which, I think one of my favorite memories here at CJAM was actually like filmed yesterday. Luke and Cole of, Windsor Art Scene, they are hosting this project called Can't Scare Me Back, where they wanted to have local queer people share their coming out stories and just talk about what it's like to be out in Windsor. And I think that just like being a part of that and the conversation that we had, it was very eye-opening because I often fall into the trap of only I have experienced this. Like nobody else knows what it's like to feel this isolated. Nobody's ever been rejected by their family like I have, Mm-hmm. It's very like self-centered kind of thinking because that's what trauma does, right?
Yeah.
But to hear the stories and how like similar they were between me and just like people that I'd never really like sat down and talked to before, that made me feel really comfortable and like safe because I was like, I'm not so alone. Like I'm way less alone than I thought I was.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
I'm so glad you had that experience. And I'm so glad that Luke and Cole are doing that project. It's
so important. Like it really is. And to just like hear these different perspectives. I'm trying to think. I think one of my favorite, I do a lot of things alone. So I often like to come here and edit videos at like random times throughout the night where I see that nobody else has booked studio time. And I'm like, now that I have a key card, I could just come in, edit my episode, and then dip. Mm-hmm. So I think anytime where I'm like fully alone here and it's kind of creepy, that's also the silly, goofy time. I love it.
Silly, goofy time. I love that so much.
And of course, like anytime I get to interact with anybody here, like I'm very much somebody who is just happy with every single experience that I have.
You are like, I don't know, I love seeing you whenever you're here because it's like you're a ray of sunshine. Like I'm like, oh my goodness, Batool's here. We can be so silly.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad that you feel that way.
I do feel that way
because we should all just be silly and goofy and I don't know,
and have fun and spread love and positivity.
Yeah. I know. Optimism is like, it's such a childish trait that we should all hold on to.
That's so true. Yeah. I have one last question before we wrap up.
Yeah.
But if there is someone out there who is thinking or considering of starting a show on CJAM, what advice would you give them?
Just do it. Just do it. Not to steal Nike's slogan, but if you have a voice and you have a story worth sharing and you think that your perspective is worth listening to, it probably is. Like any shred of self-doubt, don't feed into it. Feed into all the parts of you that are telling you to do it. Just go for it. It's so much fun. And it's a free class in audio engineering.
That's so true.
Like for real. So it's a 2-for-1 special, and you get to meet cool people. You get to be a part of the community, have amazing conversations. Like, I really don't see a downside to being involved with CJAM.
There really isn't.
There actually
and
isn't.
It's like you can commit as much as you want to commit. It's not like you're taking on like a boatload of like, oh, I have all of the CJAM stuff to do. You can literally be like, oh, I just want to do a few episodes here, or just an interview with someone. It's like a choose your own adventure.
Literally though, yeah. Walk down whatever path CJAM can provide. It's so good. So just do it.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we close off this interview?
No, but can I ask a few questions to the people listening to this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
If I'm still alive, like, I want you to find me on Instagram and message me all of these answers. Is that cool? Can I say that?
For sure.
Okay. First of all, how high are sea levels right now? Like, is there any potential that we will survive any longer? Global warming, like, how hot did it get? How cold did it get? Did those bacterial, what are they called? You know the stuff that's like frozen in the ice caps right now?
No.
Okay, so there's like a bunch of bacteria that's like frozen in the ice caps, and they're like viruses that if they got out, they would like spread and kill a bunch of people.
Damn.
Did that happen? What animal was extinct and you are now upset about it? Like, I would be really sad if, like, in the future giraffes got extinct. Like, that'd just be so sad. What is Windsor's like cultural hub? Because right now in 2023 it's fog. And how have the last 40 years of higher grounds been? And how, like, what's the gay to straight ratio here in Windsor? Because you can tell a lot about the cultural vibrancy by the amount of gays that are in a city. So what's it like? Message me on Instagram at Batoolio. Yeah, I just want to know what that perspective is like.
That would be sick. You know, hopefully someone going through these archives from 10, 20 years from now will get back to you on that.
I hope so. I love this idea. Like, thank you so much for wanting to hear my perspective about anything.
Thank you so much for like making the time to come down and chat with me about your impact on CJAM history.
Your impact, our impact.
Our impact.
Maybe the real impact is the friends that we made along the way.
Maybe it is.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming. I'm going to end it
so
there.
Exciting.